The cabin lights were bright with morning sun when everything began to fall apart at 30,000 feet. What should have been a calm daytime flight turned into a storm of panic, judgment, and helpless love. A wealthy father who controlled boardrooms and billion-dollar deals sat frozen in his first-class seat, unable to calm the one person who mattered most to him, his deaf son. And just when the stares grew cruel and the tension unbearable, a quiet black stranger's daughter did something no one expected, something that would change every heart on that plane forever. If you believe that kindness still has the power to heal broken moments and give people second chances, please like, comment, share, and subscribe to the channel Kindness Tales right now. Your support keeps these true-to-heart stories alive. Armin Caldwell had built his life on control. Control over markets, over meetings, over outcomes. He wore his tailored suit even on flights, his watch costing more than most people's yearly salaries. Yet none of that power helped him now. His son, Theo, sat beside him, hands flapping in frantic motions, his body stiff with fear as the roar of the engines vibrated through the cabin. Theo was 7 years old, deaf since birth, sensitive to sudden movements and unfamiliar sensations. The flight was supposed to be smooth, a short daytime journey for a business conference where Armin had promised to bring his son along as a bonding trip. But as the plane climbed, Theo's carefully built sense of safety shattered. Armin tried everything he knew. He signed clumsily, his movements rushed and imperfect. He held Theo's shoulders, then pulled him close, then loosened his grip when the boy recoiled. His heart pounded harder with each passing second, not from turbulence, but from the growing awareness of eyes watching. Passengers whispered. Some frowned. A woman across the aisle shook her head. A man sighed loudly as if inconvenience were the worst crime imaginable. Armin felt something unfamiliar tighten in his chest. Not anger, not fear of loss, but shame. For the first time, his money could not buy peace, and his authority could not command understanding. Theo's panic grew louder in its own silent way. His face twisted, tears spilling freely, his small body rocking as vibrations echoed through his bones. The hum of the plane felt like thunder to him. Armin could feel his son slipping further away, unreachable, and desperation began to erode his pride. He pressed the call button, but before a flight attendant could even arrive, a sharp voice from behind muttered about children not belonging in first class. That single sentence cut deeper than any business failure ever had. A few rows back sat a woman named Nyla Brooks, traveling with her daughter Amari. They were seated in economy, the sun pouring through the window beside them, lighting Amari's face as she watched the scene unfold. Nyla was tired in the way only working mothers are tired, the kind that settles into the bones but never fully rests. She had noticed the boy's distress immediately, not with irritation, but recognition. Amari was not deaf, but she was deeply sensitive, attuned to emotion, sound, and movement in a way that made crowded spaces overwhelming. Nyla had learned long ago to see past behavior into the need beneath it. Amari, only 8 years old, felt something tug at her heart as she watched Theo. She did not understand deafness fully, but she understood fear. She understood the feeling of being too much for a room. Without asking permission, she slipped out of her seat and stood in the aisle, her small hands clutching a folded piece of paper and a set of colored pencils she carried everywhere. Nyla noticed too late to stop her, but something told her not to. Sometimes children moved with a wisdom adults had forgotten. Amari walked slowly, careful not to startle anyone, until she reached the edge of first class. She didn't speak. She simply sat down on the carpeted floor a few feet away from Theo, where he could see her clearly. The plane continued its steady climb through the bright blue sky, but something shifted inside the cabin. Amari opened her paper and began to draw. Long, gentle strokes formed shapes, then patterns, then a smiling sun with rays stretching wide. She hummed softly, not loudly enough to intrude, just enough to give rhythm to her movements. Theo noticed her almost instantly. His rocking slowed. His eyes, red and wet, fixed on the paper. Amari looked up and smiled, not the kind meant to impress, but the kind that simply existed. She slid the paper a little closer and added another figure beside the sun, a small boy holding a balloon. Her motions were slow, deliberate, inviting. Theo's breathing eased. His hands stilled. Armin watched in stunned silence. He had been invisible to solutions his entire life, trained to believe answers came from expertise and expense. Yet here was a child with nothing but crayons reaching his son in a way he could not. Theo leaned forward, curiosity breaking through fear. Amari gently offered him a pencil, holding it between two fingers, waiting. Theo hesitated, then reached out and took it. His fingers trembled, but he began to draw, lines messy and uneven, yet full of release. Around them, the cabin softened. Whispers stopped. Phones lowered. Even the man who had complained earlier looked away, something like regret crossing his face. The flight attendant paused her steps, watching quietly. For several minutes, no one spoke. The plane felt lighter, as if kindness itself had altered the air pressure. Theo laughed then, a soundless laugh but unmistakably joyful, his shoulders shaking as he drew faster, adding shapes only he understood. Amari clapped silently, mimicking his joy without overwhelming it. Armin felt tears blur his vision. He had spent years building wealth for his son's future, yet this moment taught him something no inheritance ever could. His son didn't need fixing. The world needed more people willing to meet him where he was. The plane leveled off. Theo leaned against his father, calm at last, the drawing resting between them like a bridge. Armin looked up at Nyla, who had finally approached, her expression gentle but firm. There was no demand in her eyes, no expectation of gratitude, just shared humanity. Armin nodded, unable to find words worthy of the moment. The rest of the flight passed in a peaceful haze. Sunlight moved across the cabin, marking time. Theo slept, his head against Armin's arm, fingers still curled as if holding a pencil. Armin stared out the window, seeing the world differently now. He thought of all the times he had judged inconvenience as weakness, noise as disruption, difference as something to manage rather than understand. Today had dismantled that illusion. As the plane began its descent, Amari returned to her seat, waving softly. Theo stirred and waved back, his smile small but steady. Armin felt a quiet resolve take root inside him, one stronger than any contract he had ever signed. He would advocate louder, learn better, and listen deeper, not just for his son, but for others like him who were too often misunderstood. Before the story ends, if this moment of unexpected kindness is touching something inside you, please take a second to like this video, share it with someone who needs hope, and subscribe to Kindness Tales. These stories matter because people like you keep them alive. Just before we close, we have a special request for you. Please comment the word kindness below if you believe small actions can change big hearts. When the doors finally opened and passengers filed out into the bright daytime terminal, no one rushed past each other the same way they had boarded. Strangers exchanged softer looks. Armin paused, watching Nyla and Amari disappear into the crowd, carrying nothing but a backpack and a quiet strength. He knew he would remember them forever, not as saviors, but as reminders.